I want to get into this message today, and I hope you're ready for the word. We've been, since the beginning of the year, talking about the meaning of your life, going through the book of Ecclesiastes. I'll still do that for the next couple of weeks. But today, I want to call this message today, the rhythm of life. The rhythm of life. I shared with you a couple of weeks ago about the disastrous day I had trying to brew a pot of coffee without the coffee pot underneath, and coffee went everywhere. And I gave Harvey, my grandson, a pouch, and he ran around the house and spilled it everywhere and blew up the oatmeal in the microwave and then spilled coffee in my truck. And it was just like one disastrous thing after another. But I realized that that's the rhythm of life. There are good days. There are days when everything goes perfectly smooth. There are days when everything seems to fall apart. And I'm learning that these things that happen in our life are not obstacles, and they're not really interruptions. You know what they are? Building blocks. Thank you, Alan Dean. Thank you, brother. Building blocks. There are blocks that we build our lives upon. At the heart of what Solomon is saying here in Ecclesiastes is he's going to teach us right here that the things that happen in our life that, may not always be perfect, they become the blocks that we build our life upon. And today, we're going to talk about time. Time. Chapter 3, he talks about time. And that's something that God has given to each and every one of us, but he hasn't given it to us equally. We don't all have the same amount of time on this earth. Some are going to live longer than others, some shorter than others. Some of our time is going to be in more challenging situations than other people. But we've been given time, and God decides the time. Solomon teaches us here about time, our relationship with time, our need for time, how we leverage time so that we don't waste the time that God has given us. In fact, in Psalms 90, verse number 12, we're told this: teach us to number our days, or organize our days, or measure our days, so that we may gain a heart of wisdom. So the correlation between managing time, managing our days properly, is the difference between wisdom or foolishness. So we need to learn how to number our days, manage our days, so that we can live this life of wisdom. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, let's start with verse number 1. There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. Time to be born, time to die. Time to plant, time to uproot. Time to kill and a time to heal. Time to tear down and a time to build. Time to weep and a time to laugh. Time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. All parents need to teach your children that as they're learning today, right? Okay, anyway. A time to search, a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent, a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. All right, the three lessons here that Solomon's teaching us about time. And the first is this, that we need to understand the rhythms of life, or the seasons of life. Fact is, living here in Texas, we don't really understand seasons that well. We have a long, hot summer, a really short fall, an unpredictable winter, 32 degrees one day, 75 degrees the next day, and then we're right back into a really short spring, back into that long, hot summer. That's kind of our seasons. That's the way it flows. But our tendency here is that when we read this list, we look at it and we think it's kind of a multiple choice list. I can pick and choose what I like. A time for this, a time for that. I think I'll choose the time for healing. I think I'll choose the time for peace. But that's not what this is. It's not a multiple choice list that we have some kind of prerogative over which ones we want and which ones we don't want. This is called the rhythms of life. It's the seasons of life. There's a time for everything under the sun. And we may not always like it, because I look at this list and there's some things that I'm really into and some things I'm not. I'm into living and not dying. I would rather dance than mourn. I'd rather laugh until I cry. When it comes to killing and healing, it all depends on whom I'm with. But this list is not a multiple choice. This is the rhythm of life. But why doesn't God just allow us to experience good things? Why doesn't he just take all the bad things away and and just allow good things to happen in our life? That's a great question, but it's actually such a simple answer, and we all know the answer to it. We just don't like the answer. Because every single one of us know people in our lives, or we have known people in our lives that got everything they wanted. I mean, their parents gave them everything. Whatever they wanted, they got it. And what did you think about those people? You despise them, don't you? That's right. We despise. Why? Because they're spoiled, rotten, brats, self-centered, always focused on themselves, never happy with anything. And that's why, as much as you love your kids' parents, you don't give your kids everything they ask for, because that's just not good parenting. You will ruin them if you give them everything they ask for. Good parenting is teaching your kids to be wise, teaching your kids to walk with God, teaching your kids that there are some things that they're not going to get. There's some things that they will get that they don't want. That's why we really don't want any season to stay forever. I mean, having babies is great, but I don't know anybody that really wants their baby to stay a baby forever. I mean, there's some aspects of it that you really love, but it's a wonderful day when they can learn to eat on their own and you don't have to spoon feed them all the time. And it's wonderful when they learn to go to the potty on their own, and just hopefully it's not eating and potty at the same time. But it's nice when they grow up, and I can look at pictures of my kids. I can see their pictures. I look back at those seasons and I can get a little teary-eyed, because those were wonderful seasons. And it's not that I didn't want them to end. It's just that those were good. But the goal is to not miss those seasons, because those seasons will not last forever. You don't want to miss the moment that you're in right now. And God's reminding us that these seasons don't last forever. Even the challenging seasons will not last forever. Somebody needs to hear that. The tough season that you may be in will not last forever. You're facing the most difficult time of your life. Good news is it's not going to last forever. So what's the point of a tough season? What's the purpose of these tough seasons in our life? That's where Solomon goes next. Look at this in verse number 9. What do workers gain from their toil? I've seen the burden God has laid on the human race, meaning the tough seasons. He's made everything beautiful in its time. Well, that's kind of weird. Hold on. I've seen the burden God has laid on the human race, and he's made everything beautiful in his time. It's true. God can take some of the most difficult things that we go through, and he can make something beautiful out of it. And it goes on and said, he's made everything beautiful in his time. He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. No one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. God is the Alpha, the Omega, right? Okay, so the first lesson that we need to learn is we got to understand the rhythms of life. There are seasons, good days, bad days, good seasons, tough seasons. That's just part of life. Here's the second thing. The second thing is we need to learn to embrace God's eternal work. I know that's kind of clunky and maybe even sounds a little vague right now, but let me explain. We need to embrace God's eternal work. We just read that no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. God has the big picture in mind. The big picture. We get focused on the here and the now. This season is challenging. I don't like it. God sees the big picture, and we have to learn to embrace the eternal work that God's doing. For example, January, the most popular month for starting diets by far, right? New Year's resolutions, everybody's starting a brand new diet. Most popular month for signing up to go to the gym and work out. But you know what it also is the most popular month for? Quitting the diet and not showing up at the gym. It's both. Why is that? Because people get impatient with results. We get impatient. We don't see the weight falling off fast enough. We don't see the muscle building up quick enough. And so we get impatient and we just throw in the towel. And that's the way a lot of people are when they're facing challenging situations in their life. They forget the eternal work that God's doing. We're only focused on our here and now. And so we quit and we give up and we think that God's not working with us. God's not paying any attention to me. God's not listening to me. Got to embrace the eternal work. You have to recognize that God's in it for the long haul. So Solomon reveals two things that God is doing in us in any given season. So this is kind of two little subpoints under this point number 2, that we got to embrace the eternal work. And the first thing is that he's making everything beautiful in its time. Verse 11, he has made everything beautiful in its time. It doesn't say that everything is beautiful, but he's making everything beautiful in his time. He's bringing purpose. He's bringing meaning. This whole series is about the meaning of your life. He brings meaning into your life. Chocolate chip cookies have 6 ingredients: butter, sugar, eggs, flour, baking soda, and chocolate chips. Most of those ingredients aren't really good on their own. I mean, some of you may be into butter, raw butter, and sugar, but it's gonna get old real quick. But eggs and flour and baking soda and even some chocolate chips on their own, not really that good. But you put it all together and it makes something beautiful. We're all getting hungry for chocolate chip cookies now. I should have had those available. Yeah. But if you'd have come Wednesday night, you could have got some popcorn. Right? If I were to throw all these ingredients on a table, have all my grandkids around it, and I said, hey, here, enjoy your chocolate chip cookies, that wouldn't work because they need to work together in order to become beautiful. And even Romans 8:28 tells us that God works all things together for good to those who love him. So the promise is that there's nothing in our life that is meaningless. Separately, alone, it may look like that doesn't make sense. That's no good. That tastes horrible. But when you put it all together, God gives meaning to our lives. There's nothing that's meaningless. There's nothing that's vanity. That's what Solomon's assessment was early on. Everything's meaningless. No, not when God's involved, because God works everything together for good. And here's the second thing that he does in our lives in any given season. He places eternity in our hearts. He places eternity within us. Verse 11 says, he has also set eternity in the human heart. Now, let me explain this, because I know this just isn't one of those points that just makes you really get excited, but I want you to understand what I'm saying here. He has set eternity in our hearts, and this is the reason why every human philosophy exists. Because God has placed eternity in us, and we're trying to figure out the meaning of life because eternity has been placed inside of us. God has written a story in our hearts. And that's why when we hear stories that go against the story that's written in our heart, we have this visceral reaction. That's why, for me, I get so frustrated and angry that there's such a blind and blatant refusal to recognize that the life inside of a mother's womb is a gift from God. Why would we want to extinguish, to abort, to take that life? It's a gift from God. And so when somebody starts demanding abortion rights, it goes against the story that's written in my heart. I got a story in my heart that says every life has value, even the unborn life. And this is the thing that separates mankind, humankind, from the animals. And I know I'm treading on really thin ice here, but just bear with me for a second because we all love our animals. I showed you a picture of Starla's dog last week, but you know what? Starla's dog, Mac, has never stopped to give thanks or pray before a meal. Never. I pour that dog food out, he just goes right in. Why? Because eternity has not been set in his heart. Now, I know. Hey, listen, I'm not saying he's not going to heaven because I saw the movie, All Dogs Go to Heaven. Okay, I get it. And I'm not arguing with you about whether your animal's in heaven or not. If lions and lambs and white horses are there, your chickens could be there. I don't know, they could all be there. Sean Cann is gonna have a bunch of chickens in heaven. You don't know about that? Look, we're not arguing that theology here today. But here's what I am saying is there's a difference because God has put eternity inside each and every one of us. And when we are facing challenges in our life, we have to embrace the eternal work. We have to recognize the full picture that nothing is meaningless with God. In fact, Jesus did this very thing. When Jesus was talking to a group of believers and they were troubled, he said in John 14, don't let your hearts be troubled. Don't get so discouraged. Believe in God, believe also in me, for in my Father's house, he goes to the eternal. He's remembering, embracing the eternal. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. Again, he's making this connection between eternity and right here. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. He's embracing the eternal work. So listen, when you're facing challenges and difficulties and hard times in life, don't forget there's an eternal work that God's doing. There's more than just this moment right here. There's more than just this uncomfortable season that you're in right here. There's an eternal work that God's doing, and we have to remember it always. Look at verse number 12. Ecclesiastes 3, verse number 12. It says, I know that there's nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live. To be happy and to do good, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in their toil, in their work, in their labor. We should be able to find satisfaction in our labor. That's a gift of God. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it. Nothing can be taken from it. God does it so that people will fear him. Whatever is has already been. What will be has been before. And God will call the past to account. All right, so here's what I said. Number one, we got to understand the rhythm of life, the seasons of life. The things that we go through, it's just the seasons of life. Number two, we have to embrace God's eternal work. And then here's the third thing. We need to learn to display authentic joy. Now, hang with me. I know that just kind of comes out of left field. Wait. What does it mean? Display authentic joy. There's a whole lot of people that are thinking, if I could find joy, I'd display it. I used to tell my kids every morning before they went to school, hey, don't let anybody steal your joy. I told them that because there are going to be people in your life that try to steal your joy. Joy is something you can hold on to. You don't have to give it up. Joy is something you can have no matter what. So how do we find joy in each season of our life? I know there are some that are easier than others, but listen, here's how we find joy in every season of our life. Solomon gave us three things real quick. Number one, we should find joy in our work. I'm sure somebody's thinking, wait, you don't know where I work. And that was just some of my staff members, I'm sure. We should find joy in our work. There's joy that comes from doing something meaningful. There's joy that comes from doing something worthwhile, something that has value. Let me tell you something, young people, this is why socialism will never work. You're not going to find authentic joy from the government giving you a handout of a living wage so you don't have to do any real work. Because the real work is what brings the authentic joy. Don't buy into this socialism. Thank you, yes. That's what I was thinking, trying not to say it, but that's exactly what it is. See, this is where some of us don't understand this. Joy is a byproduct. Some of us we're working to try to find this feeling, joy, this happiness. If I could just find it's happiness and joy are byproducts of doing something else. You do the right things, you get the joy. You can't just go find joy. It's like you'll end up just like Solomon. It's like grasping at the wind. I think I saw joy over there. I'll go, no, I think I saw happiness over there. No. Joy comes from doing the right thing. And you start thinking about the most meaningful moments of your life. The most meaningful moments of your life are when you do something good for somebody else. And I understand that my youngest daughter doesn't want me to tell this story again, but I want to tell it anyway. When she was 9 years old, she decided that she wanted, instead of birthday gifts, she wanted to go feed the homeless. So that's exactly what we did. And can I tell you, I've been telling that story because it brings me joy ever since she was 9 years old. We went out and just did something for others. My oldest daughter, Summer, she and a friend, when she was a senior in high school, instead of going to the prom on their own, they decided to take the special needs class at Plano West to prom. So together they raised the money to rent the limo, to pay for the tickets, to pay for the meal, and took the special needs class to the prom so that they could go to something they never would have been able to go to. That brought joy. I watched the parents cry as their kids got into the limo and drove off to prom. It brought tears of joy. That was a byproduct of doing something good. You see, when we do the right things, then we get the right results. In fact, that's another reason why we encourage people to serve at Freedom Church. Look, it's not just so that we have a spot filled and a door opened or a child watched or a prayer partner. No. It's because whenever you're doing something for somebody else, it brings joy into your life. In fact, God instituted a principle that should keep us from becoming self-centered and having continual joy in our life when he instituted a principle of tithing. You know why he did that? So that we would be giving. And then when we give, he gives back. We give, he gives back. The byproduct of giving is a joy. God knew that, so he instituted this principle in the Word of God. Here's the second thing that brings joy in any season: celebrating friendships. Celebrating friendships. He said, each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction. Now, eating and drinking in the Hebrew culture was a celebration. It was a big celebration. It was what brought friends and families together to remember God's goodness, to remember God's grace. And it also reminded us of our fellowship, of how we're walking through life together. And in this culture, what they do is when they would come together, they would take a big loaf of bread, they would rip the bread apart, and they had one dip that they would each dip in, and they would dip and eat, and it was saying the same thing that nourishes you nourishes me. And I know what many of you are thinking right now. Wait a second. Did they double dip? I don't know. I don't know. But this experience was a shared experience, and it's what allowed them to find joy. That's why when we get together as a church, we love eating together. We love celebrating together. And in fact, one of my favorite events of the year is the week of Easter, when we have Holy Week, and we'll have our Wednesday night prayer service the Wednesday before Easter. And then Thursday is our Monday, Thursday meal covenant, where we come together, we turn this into a banquet hall. We invite you to invite your friends to a free dinner where we celebrate one another. We celebrate what Jesus has done. It's to commemorate the Last Supper when Jesus ate with his disciples. And we pray over the rest of the weekend, believing that as people come to our house, they will experience Jesus Christ in the power of his resurrection. It's a wonderful time to celebrate. It's just a celebration. In fact, this is another reason why you need to be in a small group, a Bible study group, in a class, or in a ministry group. And we've got new small groups launching at the end of this month. Because when you get involved in people's lives, it creates an authentic joy that you can't get by yourself. Now, I know some people say, no, I'd rather be alone. Don't hug me. Stay away from me. We've seen the t-shirts. We know there's some people like that. But life is better together. We do life better together. In fact, you know what? The more, this generation that we live in today is more connected today than ever, yet we are more alone than ever. Think about it. We know more of what's going on in everyone's life than ever before, yet we are more lonely than ever. That's because everybody you call your friend is not your friend. Just because you saw their picture and liked it, or you friended them or unfriended them, doesn't mean they're really your friend. We're connected, but we're disconnected. And what's necessary for us to be able to have authentic joy is to have authentic shared experiences. That's one of the reasons I love the church. I love the body of Christ. I love the fact that we get to come and do life together. Now, let me tell you something. I love teaching the word. I love preaching the gospel. But you know what? I love more than that, just being with you. Being with people that I love. You don't believe that, do you, Ron? Ron's got a smirk on his face like he just doesn't buy that. Are you? I love being with people. Starla, I'm a people person. I want to be with people. I want to be where people are. People are what brings real joy. Oh, yes, they bring a pain in the butt too, but I'll take it. We have to take both. It's called the rhythm of life. Same people that bring you joy are gonna bring you pain. But you can't have one without the other. So I'll take it. I love being with his family. I love being with his people. And here's the last thing, the thing that brings joy in any circumstance is that we should be able to trust God's heart. Trust his heart. When you trust God, like, look at this. It says, I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it, taken from it. God does it so that people will fear him or trust him. Did you know you can trust God? You can trust him. He loves you. Worship team, if you come back, the reason you can trust him is because God saw that our sin separated us from him. And so you know what God did? God stepped in and said, I don't want to be separated from you. I don't want you to be separated from me. I want us to have eternity together. So I'm going to send my son to pay the price for your sin, a debt that you can't pay, so you can be freed of the debt of sin and have eternity with me. God loves us that much. We can trust God because he loves you that much. There's nothing you've done that would make him stop loving you. Not one thing. And come on, we've all made some mistakes, but there's not one thing we could do that would make God stop loving you. That's why I know you can trust him. He's got your heart in his mind. He's got thoughts of you on his mind right now. I believe as heaven is expanding and mansions are being built, God's thinking, I can't wait for the time that I can bring you home to be with me. I'm looking forward to that time. There's just a few more people that need to come to know Christ. A few more people that need to say yes to Jesus. A few more people that need to come into the family of God. And then God's gonna call us home. I'm convinced it's happening sooner than we realize. He's coming back soon. And that mansion that Jesus said, I'll go away to prepare for you, I feel like is almost ready. You can trust God. He cares about you. So whatever season of life you're in right now, put your trust in God. Put your trust in Jesus Christ.